Hi, welcome back to Real Opinions. We haven't done just a regular podcast in it feels like quite a long time.
Mm.
Like I think the last one we did was Baby
That
Driver.
was the last one we did. And the last time we did one like this was probably I don't even know.
No,
Like
because
October?
and by one like this, it means that we haven't actually got films to talk about today. Like one specific film to talk about. We're just going to do like a news roundup of stuff that we thought was interesting, because either no films. Oh wait, I suppose we could talk very briefly about it if we wanted, but
We could. I mean, I'd be happy to, but I know you were a bit hesitant just because we've already done 2 hours and a half
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah, that's the
And
thing.
I've got a review up, but I'm happy to talk about it because I liked it.
So I think we'll focus on news. If we'll do the opposite this time, then so we'll do news first, and then if we feel like talking more, we could talk about it at the end. But So do you want to? Again, I've only got one news story because I'm not very good at this. So do you want to
Yeah,
start?
I'll start with
do
I think
mine?
the big one, which I think we'll probably both talk about, is the latest in what now feels is it a series of 4 director replacements for Star Wars. So
Yeah, it must. Yeah, I think there's been more fired Star Wars directors than there have been that have completed a
yes,
film.
no, that has, because the ones that have completed a film would be J.J. Abrams. You could half say Gareth Edwards, and then presumably Ryan Johnson. We don't know what's going to happen in the next couple of months. But
That's actually recent news because yesterday he stated that it's completely finished. Last Jedi, as
that
in
still
like
means nothing. That means nothing now. It means
he's done his bit.
that anything could happen still. But yeah,
And by completely finished, I mean like it was edited, all the VFX and all the sound was done, like all the scoring and everything. Like could ship it out tomorrow, done.
but yeah. So
But again,
so far
like you
we've
said,
lost the first one to go was Josh Trank, wasn't it? Who
yes. Yeah, oh God, I forgot about that. That was a while ago.
Yeah, so Josh Trank
Thank
was
God.
attached to do. At the time, it was just unknown what he was going to do, but it turned out to be Boba Fett, didn't it?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and that was because of the whole Fantastic Four thing. Now, that one I understood. Yeah, that one made sense to me because it wasn't just that Fantastic Four was bad; it was that he was reputedly like completely unworkable and
It sounded almost like a breakdown
yeah,
from what I remember.
yeah, it sounded like
Yeah.
he had a breakdown, and you don't want to entrust him with with Star Wars, and that one made sense. And at the time, it just felt like that's a shame, but a one off. But now I'm just starting to think is it them, or is it Disney? Because then Gareth Edwards kind of half got replaced, but didn't get replaced with Rogue One. He finished it, and he's doing all the press for it and everything. But like, from the sounds of things, the entire like last act was done by someone else entirely.
Which because that was the Darth Vader bit was people's favorite
Mm-hmm.
bit, basically, wasn't it? Done by a completely different director.
Yeah. Well, it's not just the Darth Vader bit though. Apparently, like it's like significant chunks of the stuff on Scarif. So
Oh, really?
the good half.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he we could generously say he finished the film, and then obviously you lost 2 directors with with Han Solo, with Christopher Miller and Phil Lord, but now also Colin Trevorrow. So a lot of speculation went around about exactly why Colin Trevorrow got kicked off, and naturally the first thing that came out was bloody creative differences, which you
Yeah.
just expect to be what they say. That's like I expected something else to come out after that, and the first thing that came out was it's because of the Book of Henry. It's because everyone hated
That I remember hearing that.
it's
Yeah.
because everyone
That
hated
flopped.
the Book of Henry, and I don't know. I didn't really believe that because I thought, so what? Like he made $1 billion film, and everyone's problem with the Book of Henry was the story, which he wouldn't be doing. So I didn't really believe that. And now what's come out is basically a really petty thing with the studio and him.
Oh, really?
Not officially. It's all from like anonymous executives and sources. But
Right.
I maybe I'm being cynical, but this is the version I believe. But the problem is, it's only this one executive's half of the story. So what this person says is that they basically pin the whole thing on Colin Trevorrow and say that Colin Trevorrow was...
Sorry, which source is this code? Like, which is this from a publication?
Yeah, I can't remember who he spoke to. 1 second. It was something like the Hollywood Report. It was a proper... He spoke to a proper...
Yeah, a proper, like, A-list outlet.
Yeah. And this, so it's not. It does have a bit of weight. It's not just like some random blog said some executive told me this. But what this guy said was during the making of Jurassic World, Colin Trevorrow focused a lot of his creative energies on asserting his own opinion, and at the time, basically, the guy is trying to politely say that Colin Trevorrow was like an egomaniac.
Right.
This politeness soon kind of fades as the story goes on. But he said that on that particular project, no one kind of stood up to him because he was personally hired by Spielberg. And
oh, really?
Yeah,
oh, I didn't know.
Yeah,
that.
He was personally hired. I knew this because I remember Spielberg sort of talking about how he saw Safety Not Guaranteed and went like, "I want that guy." I'm like, okay. Weird.
What?
Yeah.
That film?
but whatever.
Okay.
So he was personally hired by Spielberg to work on Jurassic World. Right. And so no one else could fire him or tell him or control him. That's what this executive is saying. And he said that on the set of Jurassic World, Colin Trevorrow was unbearable. That's quotation marks right there. That he had an egotistical point of view that he was always asserting, we're doing it my way, my choices are the best. Okay, I have no reason to believe or disbelieve that particularly. But then what he says was that during pre-production on episode 9. Thank you, 9, Trevorrow reportedly grew more and more unmanageable while taking repeated stabs at multiple drafts of the script. And so once the Book of Henry was released and it had all those reviews, apparently that was when the executives saw their opportunity to swoop in and just get rid of him with like a viable reason. They wanted to, and I'm using quotation marks again, dump him because they weren't thrilled with working with him anyway. They then, this executive said, quote, he was a difficult guy. He's really, really confident. Let's call it that. He said that there's no shortage of overly confident directors. And this was the bit that made me go, because like up until then, there's no reason to disbelieve what this guy's saying. But when it got to this part, I went, no. He said, Hollywood has no shortage of overly confident directors who have been labelled difficult. But Kathleen Kennedy didn't want a repeat of Christopher Lord and Phil Lord debacle, blah, 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 get into the next part. But what he said was, a lot of these young, new directors want to come in and say, I want to do this, I want to do that. And a lot of these guys get very rich very fast and believe their own hype. And that just felt like, like there's a point, like what that guy's suggesting is that all of these young directors that we've hired have come in and they've all been egotists. But when you've got 4 in a row, like, have you considered it's you, not them? And what he then said, and this was the part that just felt so studio-y, I just hated it. It was, and they don't want to play by the rules. They want to do stuff differently. But Kathleen Kennedy isn't going to fuck around like that. And I thought, no, you hired them to do what they do, and then you're accusing. You believed their hype. You hired them to do Star Wars. What are you talking about?
Well, isn't the other thing that wasn't the kind of the behind the scenes for the Phil Lord Chris Miller thing? Wasn't that meant to be kind of much less of a big problem and much more of a personal thing between them and Kathleen Kennedy?
The studio line that I heard was that they didn't like Kathleen Kennedy did not like their improvisational style, nor did Lawrence Kasdan. They had a script and they were like, do this, and they were improvising and making stuff up a lot on the fly, and they didn't think that that was good.
Right.
It just feels very much like everything that was said about Colin Trevorrow there was them trying to blame him for being difficult, when it sounds more to me like we wanted him to do exactly what we said all the time. And he wouldn't.
Yeah.
And so he's believing his own hype. Like, they say, oh, they don't want to play by the rules, but it sounds more... I'm getting the impression that Disney's rules are more do exactly what we say all the time. Yeah. And he then does follow it up with, that's not to say that Kennedy is dictating exact instructions. Doesn't
sound like that.
It's not how it sounds. And I've seen, like, I watched The Force Awakens Blu-ray, and I'm not naive, I know that films are business, and I know that these big budget films are sometimes made by committee. I have never seen bonus features feel more like corporate propaganda than in The Force Awakens Blu-ray. I've never seen a film look so boring to make than The Force Awakens. Like, normally they kind of... they'll try and make it look like a creative and dynamic environment. And The Force Awakens special features, it's like loads of boardrooms. And there's a bit where Kathleen Kennedy, like, announces that J.J. Abrams is going to be making the film. And instead of it feeling like an exciting creative decision, it sounds like they're bloody, like, announcing a new CEO. Like, she stands up in front of all this room and goes, I'd like to announce that the director of The Force Awakens is J.J. Abrams. And someone's, like, typing it down, and then everyone applauds, and it just felt so clinical and cold. And then there's all this stuff in it about, they try and paint it as like, oh, we're trying to get to the heart of Star Wars and what we love about it, but it felt so kind of calculating. Like, it was like they had a list of all the nostalgic things that they had to do. It sounds, it sounds like something that Red Letter Media would joke, but like it was like they had just a list of all the nostalgic things they had to do, and they were like, it was really calculated. And it was, when I was watching that, I really got the impression that J.J. Abrams was there as a safe pair of hands, and that it was a load of people higher up making the most Star Wars-y Star Wars they could. And it was fine for The Force Awakens because it was actually good, but I just don't like that. I don't like the idea that making Star Wars should be so restrictive and businessy. And again, I know that all of these films are. I know that it probably is no different making a Marvel film or whatever, but I have to. Even like the Marvel films, I got more of an impression that the director, like James Gunn, gets to inject James Gunn into Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah. Whereas
this just felt like they were just finding a manager, not a director, like someone to come along and micromanage everything. Which is confusing because they're hiring all these young people. Like, if that's what
I think it's the same with when we talked ages ago about Spider-Man guy getting the job. What was it, John? It's just they're hiring people that are like they have the image of like a young, fresh newcomer, so that it gives the idea of like this is the new generation and all of that.
That would be really creative
because they want someone inexperienced to basically be malleable for.
But what they are consistently finding is that they're just getting people who are inexperienced. And like, if they just want to hire Ron Howard, just fucking hire Ron Howard. Like he'll just do it. Why hire someone who's made Safety Not Guaranteed? What? Why get the guy who made The Kings of Summer to make King Kong? What are you doing?
Yeah.
I don't understand why they're hiring these people, and then they're surprised that they want to do their own thing. Like, if you hired them, isn't that what you're telling them you want them to do? If you hire someone like that, they know they've not made these kind of films before, so they must think, oh, they must like what I did and want me to do my thing. Because it's not like, you hire J.J. Abrams and he knows that he's got a history of these things, and so he knows that the reason he's being hired is off that track record. But if if I just made a small indie film and Star Wars came up to me and asked me to make Star Wars, I'd assume that it must be because they liked my film and liked my approach and thought that I could bring something to it. Because it's sure as shit not because of my track record for making blockbusters. I just don't understand what they're doing. But this like, I don't know, the more I read about this, the more I just felt like Trevorrow was being pushed out because the Book of Henry was a flop. And also he maybe didn't agree with every word that left the committee's mouth.
Because that's the thing, is that I don't think that... Because the thing is, but the Book of Henry wasn't a colossal flop.
No.
Like, it wasn't
And it was
praised.
small. It wasn't like a...
Yeah, that's the thing.
It was...
Is that it was a thing that everyone saw, like... Well, not... no one saw, really. It flopped, it wasn't that good, and no one really talked about it because there was nothing to talk about with it.
Yeah.
It was just a bad film. And then everyone forgot about it. Like, I forget they even directed that.
It's not the same as Fantastic Four.
No.
Fantastic Four was like, oh, he had something big and he dropped the ball. This was, he made a small indie film that people said the script was the problem. Now we'll kick him off?
But also, why would you not have heard how troublesome he was on Jurassic World?
They hired him because he...
Jurassic World.
Because he made like Jurassic World. I like Jurassic World, but it is a safe studio film. So if he was being an egotist, if it worked, he made a successful film from it.
Yeah.
And I just don't really... The more that you read about it as well, the more and more it just sounds like I think Kathleen Kennedy's got an ego problem.
Yeah, that is kind of what it sounds like. But that's the thing, is that that she's getting name dropped in both of the major decisions to drop directors.
It's always her. It's like, I've never heard a producer be so central to everything. Like, you know, when Josh Trank was having his problems on the Fantastic Four, and they brought someone in to, they brought people in to kind of re-edit it and refix it. Did you hear anyone's name as much as you would say here Kathleen Kennedy's with this? And did you hear when they were, messing around with Suicide Squad? There was no, like, producer that was constantly being name-dropped as central to that?
But also, even with the Marvel stuff, like when they dropped Edgar Wright...
It wasn't Kevin Feige.
No.
They never
said he had a problem with it. They just said that it was it was still creative differences.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a single person, it was the entity of Marvel.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. It was... I never heard Kevin Feige fired Edgar Wright. I just heard Marvel and Edgar Wright split. Whereas whenever this happens, Kathleen Kennedy is in every story clashing and butting heads with these young directors that she has hired. I don't understand what she's doing. And then this led me on to something that I thought was interesting, which was the article...
Yeah, I was thinking this is a good segue.
The article was... I don't remember where I found it. I don't want to take credit or something that I didn't write. Just give me a second while I find exactly... So this is from The Atlantic, and it was an article entitled Hollywood Moguls Are the New Auteurs. And what this article was basically saying was that we've kind of moved back to the golden age of the 1930s and 1940s, and to an extent, I guess, the 50s. So in case you don't know what that means... In the sort of classical Hollywood era, directors were basically managers. The studio would have a script, they would have an idea, and they would go, you make this and make it exactly as it is. Like Casablanca, for example, they famously had and this was used on most films, but it's just Casablanca's a good example because it's a classic. The director would have basically an instruction manual of how you frame shots and how you stage scenes in a very kind of, this is how it is done. You do this, you just do what this instruction booklet says, follow the rules, make the film. And so back then, directors weren't auteurs. That was a later thing. I guess the 70s kind of came with that.
The thing that I feel like I might be butchering this point because of half remembering it, but a thing that I always remember is that kind of the idea of the director becoming the auteur kind of stemmed from when all the guilds were kind of setting up and all of these unions, because the idea that I think it was originally that between the Screenwriters Guild and the Directors Guild, the screenwriters went for, at the time, I believe, like higher pay for less.
Oh, really? I've not heard that.
Like kind of feature in the kind of titles, and the directors went for more control over the projects for less pay with a higher kind of like a bigger title card.
Yeah.
Really. Right, Future Jack butting in here now. That is something that I believe I heard of a Script Notes podcast a while back from a WGA representative. I can't go back into the catalogue because it's locked off to premium users, and so I've taken it sort of upon myself to kind of just get a citation for me saying what I've just said, and the closest thing I can kind of come to is a chapter in The Ownership of Rights in Audiovisual Productions, a Comparative Study by Margaret Salo-Cannell. The kind of section that I'm taking from, if you want to be really precise, is page 307, where it's talking about how screenwriters actually have less creative control on their projects than directors. So the example is that they're giving is a quote from the Directors of Writers Guild East stating in 1990, saying, our problem is that we fail to negotiate for additional uses. Our problem is the problem of having our work butchered by having a work rewritten and completely unable to protect the integrity of the script. So that's kind of saying about how through guild negotiations over time, like the Writers Guild have inherently got this kind of, their work is not viewed as something with creative integrity. Like, well, obviously it's respected, but it's something that you can take a script and completely scrap it right away with nothing holding that writer to the eventual product, which is something I'll point out for when they talk into the directors, where I'm quoting now, for example, for motion pictures, at least 10 weeks after the closing of principal photography, and for low-budget films a minimum of 6 weeks, the director has the right to request that director's cut of a theatrical motion picture will be previewed before a public audience, or be screened before a private audience. However, after the director's cut has been established, an ultimate decision with respect to the form of the final version of the film lies in the hands of the producer. So basically saying that for 10 to 6 weeks, roughly, after you've shot a film for directors in the US, they have complete right to the cut for those weeks, which is sort of why, like, I presume you get into cases such as the Suicide Squads and all of that, and why eventually, you know, like, director's cuts exist, and then the producers take over for the thing that eventually gets shipped out into theatres. And so basically this is a point of saying that directors get to, if they want, they can screen their version of the film in front of test audiences to kind of get the reaction of so they can prove that their vision works. And therefore, you know, present that to producers and say, I've created this. They get a bit more creative integrity. And also, we're talking about I'm diverting a lot from the original podcast here, I'm sorry, but also talking about there's now been discussions where what happens with the guild, because this obviously directly goes against what's happened with the Han Solo film, where the directors have been kicked off in the middle of production, like a few weeks from finishing the entire project of the film. And so it comes down to what are the rights that they're going to have now, because with a writer, you can kick the writer off, scrap everything, and like you can just nothing is holden to that writer. With this, it's completely different, because you don't know whether or not the original directors are allowed to get some kind of royalty, something from the box office returns. How much of the footage they're going to use, that dictates whether or not they're still going to get a director's credit. So yeah, it seems like it's something that's very much that Star Wars is definitely kind of toying with, kind of really changing up what we've established with the Directors Guild so far. But again, I'm just a British guy. I'm no expert on the American guilds by any means, just from what I've read now and from what I've heard. So if you do find yourself more interested in that sort of stuff, I definitely recommend checking out more of the guild related podcasts on Script Notes. They're really great at going into the details, probably too much into the details, because a lot of it glosses over, but they do really great. So whenever they're going into negotiations, they always bring someone in to talk it over, like what's the points of what's happening this year, and it's all really interesting. So I definitely recommend that. And that's a really long digression for a podcast, but let's go back to that. So I just thought it was interesting that the idea of it being kind of an industry choice rather than like
And then
a natural leaning.
And then, like, as you get into the sort of 70s-ish era, you have, like, things like The Deer Hunter and that, where they are director films, and the directors kind of became the big name from them. Things like that, I don't know what else, like Easy Rider, those kind of things that they weren't run by a studio. The director was an author, and that's where that kind of came from. And in the, like I said, in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, directors were, for the most part, just people who guided the project along to completion.
Yeah.
And what this article is saying, there are obvious exceptions like Hitchcock, but many would posit that Hitchcock was kind of the first auteur, so yeah. But basically, this article is saying, not since the Golden Age have industry executives wielded so much influence. And I think that's true, but I also think that, like, that never really went away. Studios have always been meddling and controlling. But I don't think in my lifetime I've ever seen studios so publicly having so much influence. Like, with this Star Wars thing, it's so public that Kathleen Kennedy is making these films. And then we have, like, producers that are kind of authors now, like Kevin Feige is name dropped in this article as the other one, the producer overseeing the Marvel films. John Lasseter, who's in charge of Pixar. Jason Blum, who does basically every horror film now. And those like big names that you associate Jason Blum with a lot of those horror films more than you do the directors. Like, that's a Blumhouse film.
Yeah.
And it's got definitely the Blumhouse style. And it just feels like the director is someone who comes along to do it. Like Andy Samberg. That's not Andy Samberg's the comedian, isn't he? What was the name of it? Who's the name of the Lights Out man? His name was Samberg.
Oh, I never remembered his name.
What was the Lights Out man guy called? 1 second.
No, but it is the idea as well that that's kind of similar to when we talked about how all these Marvel movies are picking up very small directors and launching them into big budget productions. On the similar side, Blumhouse is taking very small projects which
David
don't cost that
Samberg
much, and then putting them out for because there was that really interesting article about how the production of Blumhouse is they basically try to make every single film under 5 million.
Yeah.
And then they give everyone on staff like a cut of the profits. And so it's really just about churning out, like, it doesn't matter if one's a flop because it's not about having the one big picture. It's about giving lots of chances to lots of different projects. And so that's kind of similar in the bringing up people that haven't had experience before.
I would
less risk.
Say that out of all of these, I've never heard anything particularly about John Lasseter at Pixar. It feels like Pixar's just a generally collaborative environment. But I think Jason Blum is a good example because even Get Out, which does have its own unique voice and does have things that make it its own thing, it still had the jump scares and everything that I don't particularly think its director wanted to be in there. That felt like something that Jason Blum or the studio, whoever, will have said. Put these in.
Things like the trailer was changed against the director's choice by Jason Blum.
Was it?
I
didn't know that.
Like the zombie deer shot. Do you remember that? Like the skeleton.
I remember that shot because it was the one shot in the trailer I liked.
Yeah, because they shot it. Because I was remembering listening to a thing with Jordan Peele, and he was saying about how they shot it, and he didn't really like the footage, but they kept it, and they were looking for stuff for the trailer, and apparently, like, Blumhouse insisted, we got to have some kind of jump scare in the trailer, like something that looks a bit more supernaturally to get. And so there is definitely control there, but like you said, there's a bit more artistic integrity.
It doesn't.
That I think comes from the low risk side.
I would say that Jason Blum, at the very least, it feels like he's hiring people appropriately, and they probably know what they're getting in for. Whereas this Star Wars thing does feel a bit more ruthless, I think. But I just thought it was interesting that Kevin Feige, Jason Blum, and Kathleen Kennedy are all big names that people would associate with these films, in some cases more than the directors, and that does kind of give it a bit of a feeling of that golden age of Hollywood. The only difference is that in the golden age of Hollywood, they were making Casablanca, and now they're making Sinister.
Well, I think that also comes into the whole universe idea. In that, when you consider all the golden age of Hollywood, like I imagine the Singing in the Rain scene where they're walking through the set and they're filming 5 different films at once, and it's all just there, and it's like a conveyor belt. And that's sort of what's happening with like Marvel, where you see a timeline of films rather than just whatever's coming next. And they kind of do that with Star Wars now, where there's a structure to them coming out. Like you're going to get Star Wars every 2 years, and in between that you're going to get a spin-off film, and like there was all the Justice League stuff or whatever. That's all planned out. Like there's a schedule to it.
Yeah.
And it's almost like people have compared it to almost like cinema becoming almost like TV. Like you're not going for the next big kind of prestige picture. You're going for like the next installment in the series, like the next basically big budget episode of something.
It used to be that I think it was Tom Hanks that said this, that theatre's like the actor's medium, TV's the writer's medium, and that film is for directors. And it doesn't feel like it when you see stuff like this. It feels like TV's for directors now as well.
Yeah,
but it just it made me a little sad. I don't know, because even though I'm not that naive that I didn't think stuff like this happened, I just didn't think it was this bad. And this article does actually kind of agree with us when it talks about Colin Trevorrow. It says that his firing is not just because of his supposed ego, but it's also a symptom of a new way of doing business where franchise directors have to defer creativity to their producers on a scale that's unusual even by Hollywood standards. And I did think like this Star Wars thing does seem to be even more so than others. I do definitely feel like Star Wars is even more committee-y than others. And that's, as I said, like it worked. The Force Awakens was a good film. I just don't like it as a concept. But yeah, I mean, it made a good film. I'm not attacking the Star Wars films. I just don't really like that concept.
No, definitely agree with you. Like even like I say, the Marvel films are the most like formulaic things out at the moment. And still, when you think about it, there's only the Edgar Wright thing. That's the only time I can think that they fired a director in how many 15 films or however many.
I mean, they had they had a bit of a headbutt with Joss Whedon, didn't they? But even then, it wasn't. They didn't fire him.
Yeah, they had a bit of problems, and also they had a bit of a problem with. There was a bit of a problem with Iron Man 2, which is why. Like kind of similar to what Joss Whedon had with Avengers 2.
But it was. I still felt like, even though I felt like with Joss Whedon there was a bit of back and forth, and probably with Jon Favreau, like they still sort of got to they got to make their films. But like they just had to set up some other stuff. Whereas if it was Star Wars, I don't think they'd have got to, like Joss Whedon still got to do things that were Joss Whedon-y in Age of Ultron.
And I suppose you can put part of it down to, with Marvel, they're kind of building a new thing, whereas Star Wars, they're very much like on the heels of something else. But again, it is down to like, when you think Marvel being such a kind of a machine that does just churn out these films, having very little problem with its directors over like however many films.
I think because they've done it, they've hired appropriate directors. There's no one they've hired that has been like as like Phil Lord and Miller. Like they've hired people who make sense. Like what's the most out there person that they've hired?
James Gunn.
Probably, and even James Gunn had made a superhero film before, and his films had always been, if not action films, like Slither's still got action in it. Like he was making genre-y films, you know. It was, and he had a sense of humor that was something they clearly wanted. Like he has his own style, but it's a style that could work within the constraints of Marvel. And Marvel have let their directors. There's been a bit of give and take. Like I said, James Gunn got to do James Gunn things. Joss Whedon got to write a Joss Whedon film. Shane Black basically got to make Iron Man into Kiss Kiss Bang Bang with robots. And even Kenneth Branagh got to do some of the sort of Shakespearean-y stuff in the first Thor.
Mm.
You know, they have let these people do their thing to an extent. They've also asked them to set up other things. They've also probably said no at other points, and there'll have been some cut-off point there. But Star Wars does feel different. And that's probably why they're losing their directors, not because they're believing their own hype, but because they are just being unfair.
Mm.
I mean, I'll give credit. This is the one thing I will give credit to Warner Brothers for. Like, DC might be a bit of a clusterfuck at the moment, but I do genuinely believe that Zack Snyder is getting to make the films he wants. Like, it does. I do honestly think Zack Snyder is making the film he wants to make. I just don't think that it's the film other people want. And the same with, like, I mean, they let Gareth. I know it's Legendary. They let Gareth Edwards do Godzilla. With no Godzilla. Yeah, they let him do it if he wanted to. And Skull Island didn't feel like Skull Island had probably the most bizarre director choice of all of them, I think. Out of all these big budget things, like Safety Not Guaranteed was at least a sci-fi film. Josh Trank did come from Chronicle, which was a superhero film. But the
Kings of Summer.
Kings of Summer is like, what? But I it didn't seem like Skull Island was a disaster. It didn't.
No.
He seemed to be all right. So I don't think it's these young directors coming in believing their own hype. I do think the problem is with Disney.
Yeah. No, I'd agree with that. Yeah. Okay, well, I'll go into my my kind of story, which I know you're not as interested. Well, to be fair, I'm more
fascinated.
So if I go through like the top like 5 films grossing worldwide this year, number 1's Beauty and the Beast, number 2 Fate of the Furious, number 3 Despicable Me 3, and then number 4 is Wolf Warrior 2 from China, where like you have stories coming out from it's the highest grossing film in China of all time, and it did it in 12 days. Which is like, and I think it sold more tickets in China than Avatar did in America.
Yeah,
like it's made more, and that's without like, and so it's done better worldwide than Wonder Woman, Pirates of the Caribbean, Guardians 2. Surprisingly, it's done better than Transformers did in China then, and all of those like other products. And so
products.
I know that's the thing. I can't think of any like nice way to put it, but it's one of those things where but it's not a thing that anyone's talking about, obviously, because it's Chinese. Like it's just something that, like, the way that you said you found it, were you going through Box Office Mojo and then it's just at the top of the list and no one seems to know why.
Yeah.
Like it's just but so Wolf Warrior 2 is just the reason why I wanted to mention it at all, besides the fact it's this Chinese action film that's somehow very popular, is that it seems like it's just propaganda for the Chinese military.
What? Oh, okay. I didn't. Like I said, I didn't know anything about it. I just saw on Box Office Mojo. And what the fuck is that?
So, and I'm just trying to remember so I get most of my information from like, basically like websites that try to explain Chinese film for American audiences. But the way that they described Wolf Warrior is that if you imagine kind of the main character is almost like kind of like a James Bond type, like he's a militant, or like he's like a hero, but instead of like if it comes to an action scene, it won't be like he's Mission Impossible, like he's the one doing everything. In order to solve a problem, he'll call in the army, and then the army will do something really cool, and that's like his heroic moment. And so even weird, it's just it just sounds so weird because the whole film it's about this Chinese guy going to Africa. Basically, it's an action film where this guy hears that all these Chinese villagers that are working in Africa to like get resources to send back to China are like in trouble by being attacked, and so he goes with the entire Chinese army and they like bomb the people that are attacking these Chinese people, and that's the film. And I know that doesn't sound it's the fact that he's got the whole army behind him, which is a very strange film. Like I can't think of an action film where the army is the good guy the whole time. But also, the film ends with a picture of a Chinese passport, which then up on screen comes "Citizens of the People Republic of China. Don't worry if you run into danger while abroad. The strength of China has your back."
Oh my god!
So it really is like that's the thing that made me go, yeah, like realize that it is just sheer propaganda. That's it.
Okay. Do you think do you think they're forced to go? Do you think their government forced them to see this?
No idea.
Like, do you think they had any choice in the matter, and that's why it's the most successful film ever?
I'm just reading this review from this review saying the sheer number of black bodies that are blown away by automatic machine gun fire in Wolf Warriors 2 is astounding.
Oh my god. So we're probably never going to get to see that one then. That's going to be a box office hit that we'll have to leave out of our list for the year.
I don't think I'd ever want to watch it. I just find it so interesting that it's just about a Chinese guy going with the army to blow up Africans, and that's the most popular film ever made in China.
Well, that was Jack's China box office roundup again.
It's weird to round it up without seeing the film, but it.
Well, last year didn't they have that?
Was it was that end screen that just blew that it just completely threw me.
Was it last year where China had another film that ended up kind of climbing really high up the worldwide box office called The Mermaid?
I was going to say The Mermaid, but that was basically that did actually screen in the UK as well because it was because
it wasn't about black people being blown up, so it was
no exactly that's the thing because it is like that's kind of. From what I got from it, it's kind of like absurdist action comedy.
It was action. Like, I saw the only bit I've seen is that bit where he's in the bath, and it looks
You've seen
ridiculous.
more than me then. I remember watching the trailer, and it's one of those things where it's intentionally ridiculous, and I think it is a comedy, like foremost. So that I could kind of understand people abroad maybe watching it and finding it funny. Like a comedy, I can get. Propaganda selling abroad.
What do you think that if they did air it over here, what do you think they changed the end titles to say? It couldn't say Citizens of China.
No idea.
It couldn't. It would have to say something else. Maybe it would just say "Watch out." Don't mess with us.
Watch out for China. Yeah. Well, you can watch the first film in the UK.
Oh yeah, I didn't ask because it is a sequel. Yeah, I didn't even ask about that.
I'm going through the Wikipedia page for Wolf Warrior 2. A promotional poster showed Leng Feng giving the middle finger with the slogan, "Anyone who offends China, no matter how remote, must be exterminated."
Oh, Jesus. This sounds like Team America, but for China.
Yeah.
And not a comedy.
It's serious.
Yeah. Oh my god. I kind of do want to see it now.
Due to its patriotic themes and positive portrayal of the Chinese military, it also received high praises from China's state-owned and military-affiliated media.
You know what this sounds like? I figured out what this is. This is the film that they watch in Inglourious Bastards.
Yeah, I know what you mean. The sniper film.
Oh, what was that film called? It's that. That's what this is. Because as soon as you said that part about the state official ever, I was thinking of just when Hitler's in there and he taps the guy on the shoulder and went, "This is your finest work," and he starts crying. like that's what this is. What's Nation's Pride? Is that an actual film?
I think that is what it's called.
Which people have also compared to American Sniper.
Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, I suppose that was also quite patriotic, but I suppose it was more about the character, whereas this seems like it's less about the character, more about
the endless killing, like that film in Inglourious Bastards.
There's one line in the Wikipedia that's confused me, where it's kind of, you know how they have cast listing? One's just got Han Zhang, an army fan. His father owns the factory in Africa, and he is literally the boss. I don't... He is literally the boss. Why is that in the Wikipedia page?
What would they mean?
Anyway,
not
right.
literally the boss. What would figuratively the boss mean?
It feels like he's gone onto his own Wikipedia page to big himself up. Right. Okay. But yeah, that was my very rambly points on this weird film that is the fourth highest grossing film of 2017.
I gotta say, I didn't expect it to take the turn it did. When I saw, I was expecting something fun. I did not expect ethnic cleansing and genocide. I didn't see it going down that route. I thought like it'll be.
It is about him.
You said it sounds
about him
weird.
Saving Chinese in Africa.
You said it was going to be weird. Now you just expected a wacky, over the top. That no.
There's a tank battle scene apparently, so I'd watch that.
Okay, so
yeah, your story.
So I've got a smattering of bits and pieces about it. First off, it is now the #1 R-rated horror film of all time, box office wise. This isn't inflation adjusted, but yeah, it is beaten out The Exorcist. But it's still got time to keep going, is the thing. So it could well overtake The Exorcist. And it's also the second highest supernatural horror film of all time, behind The Sixth Sense. So,
oh, really?
Which I wouldn't call a horror film, but I guess that one's like a
No, I was going to say I
12-ish,
wouldn't call that a horror film.
But I think it's nearly there to take over that one as well. So it's probably going to end up being the most successful horror film of all time, non-inflation adjusted.
Okay.
Which is surprising, because I didn't realise people were so bloody attached to it. Like, the TV movie, it's not like the TV movie was like as big as Nightmare on Elm Street or anything.
Well, the thing is that I've heard several people now have said, "Oh, I've gone back and watched the original." Like they were like, as in at least 4 or 5 people have told me that, like people that weren't that into films, and they've all said that the TV movie was good.
Well, they're all wrong. I'm gonna have you watched the I know I do this every bloody time we do a podcast. Have you watched the Red Letter Media on the original?
I've seen the one that they did for the new film where they compared it to the original.
Yeah, that's what I meant. So you saw the bit where she was going, "Why is it so mean? Why does it hate?" It's just dread. I'm like, if you like the original, it's only because you saw it as a kid and it probably scared you then. Because if you go back and rewatch it now, it is trash. It is really, really bad. It is horrendously acted. So stupid. I've done this 1,000 times. I'm not going to go on it again. But no, those people that you spoke to, Jack, are wrong.
I think the main thing that's made it popular is the fact that it's a horror film with likable characters, which you don't get nowadays.
No.
At all.
No.
Like, and also it's got the, like, you could say Get Out was sort of that, but that's very much like I don't know, I think it's just a bit more, I think it's because it's got the nostalgia trip of all the 80s stuff. It's kind of got, it's almost like it's the closest you can get to sort of like a family horror, horror film, I suppose.
Yeah, like Poltergeist.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, is the
or even
closest thing I
Krampus.
can think of. That also did really well in the box office.
I know. I wish Krampus should take the place of your fucking Conjurings. Watch Krampus.
I agree with that.
I'm going to just drop that into every podcast now, like a subliminal message. Just I'll say it backwards, and we'll play it throughout, like very quietly in the background.
Well, and so what other stories did you have?
Well, the other thing, there's been a lot of stuff going around about the adult casting of the children. Did you see the thing where the kids casted their adult selves? That was quite cute. I quite liked that. The kids came up with who they would want to play them, and it was like exactly what you'd expect. Like they picked the coolest people they could. Like the guy whose Bill was like, "I want Christian Bale to be me," and it was cool. I did like it, and that was just fun. Some of them were actually alright suggestions, and some of them I was like, "What? kid, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, the guy who was Ben said that Chris Pratt should be in when he's older, which makes sense because he's supposed to like lose a bit of weight and become kind of a fun, charming. Like he's the kind of becomes the cool one when he's older. Beverly said Jessica Chastain, which is the thing that everyone's saying now, which is silly because she looks so much like Amy Adams. It should blatantly be Amy Adams. I think it was either Richie or Eddie that said Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I don't remember which. But yeah, they all had their suggestions, and that was quite cute. But the director has since
I like the age range of all of these, like the idea that one will be Chris Pratt and one will be Christian Bale, and one's just had a really rough time with it. That he looks like 20 years older.
and Travis they got Travis Bowers to do it as well. I can't remember who he said, but that made me think, oh, did he not die then?
Yeah, who will play your older version of your corpse?
I think he said Casey Affleck.
Realized, should I tag that?
Casey.
Should I say spoiler?
He wanted Casey Affleck.
Well, he's got the creeper thing down.
But the director has since said that the kids may well appear in part 2 in like flashback sequences. The only reason I can think of for that is because nothing fucking happens in the adult half. And so it's like, what do we do? Pennywise did some more stuff that we didn't see in the first film, so let's cut back to that.
I was just thinking, when it said, was it part 2, like at the end of it, which was, I found kind of cringy, but...
I didn't mind that.
Because it was the fact that I heard people go, oh, there's going to be another one, and I just thought, no.
Oh, so you've seen that again? I'm going to do it again, but you've seen the Red Letter Media one where they talk about how that one guy in the cinema went, I knew it.
Oh yeah. I thought of that when I saw the screen as well.
You gotta do the adults.
They gotta tell the second half of the story. Yeah, they do.
But not that much happens in the adult half. Like it like there's I'm reading the book, as you know. I've kind of fallen behind because I've been doing other things, but it keeps.
Well, also because it's massive.
Yeah, but like the way the book is structured is like it's constantly going back and forth between the two. Instead of like one half. It's like every other chapter's a switch.
Okay, I was always under the impression that it was very cut and dry.
No, and they and sometimes they'll do it like in the middle of a chapter as well. Like one of them will be walking somewhere and something will be happening, and then he'll think back to when he was doing it as a kid. So it's very kind of jumbled. And that kind of disguises the fact that nothing happens in the adult half because it's like peppered throughout. But when you think about it, like if I do that now and just kind of filter it out so that, you know, just the adult stuff is in one pot, I use a sieve and the adult stuff goes through and I look through it and I go, nothing happens. Nothing happens here. Like,
well, all the Discovery stuff is gone, which is the most interesting part of it, is them kind of slowly figuring out.
But Jack... Have you not seen the other part of this story? He has said that in part 2 he would like to explore its origins and maybe introduce his enemy.
Well, they've hinted at it.
They hinted at the turtle.
It's canon.
So yeah, I mean, part 1 was good, so maybe they'll fix the adult half significantly.
The fact that we could be seeing big budget space turtle
is exciting enough. It's
good enough for me.
Exactly.
Yeah, that would be the only reason I'd go see the second one.
But the last news story on it, and this was something that as soon as it became a big hit, I instantly started thinking of this, and what was weird was I picked the exact right film. I thought, like, they're going to do loads of Stephen King, like, high-profile Stephen King remakes now, aren't they? Because, like, Stephen King films have never stopped. There was, like, one called The Cell a couple of years ago. They've been coming out throughout the 2010s, throughout the 2000s.
Are you sure it's because of it, though, and not because of the success of The Dark Tower?
But, like, they have been scattering them throughout the noughties and through the 2010s, but they've been, like, small and based on books no
Well,
one
they
cares.
did the Hulu series last year as well.
But
I don't think anyone watched
when this came out, I thought now they're going to go back to all the big ones and remake them. The big ones. They're not going to keep doing The Cell and 1408 and whatever. They're going to go like, what were the other big ones? The Shining? No, we can't do The Shining. No one's going to do The Shining.
Yeah, we could.
Yeah.
That's
and they were like, Carrie? We just did Carrie. Oh, yeah, I forgot that. Cujo, that's not got supernatural elements. Christine, it's about a car. No. And I knew the one they were going to do was Pet Sematary. I just thought Pet Sematary, it's got a creepy ghost kid. It's the most like it of all of them. And I thought, they're going to do Pet Sematary. That's one they can remake without remaking The Shining and being vilified. I was like, it's going to be Pet Sematary. But then doubt crept into the back of my head, and I went, but is Pet Sematary is not big enough? It's not as, like...
I've heard of it.
It's not as big as it, though. I thought, like, maybe they won't do Pet Sematary. No, he's said that people are working on Pet Sematary. There are scripts coming out, and the director of it has said that he is really interested in doing it because it's his favourite book. It's his favourite Stephen King book.
Oh.
Apparently it was the first one he read. And what he has said is, if we do it, we have to do it justice, like we did with it. He said that there apparently been scripts have been going around for the past few years, but I guess those scripts are probably now jumping up the
corporate ladder.
Yeah. And he said none of them have, in our opinion, respected the book or been representative of it or something like that. But that's going to happen now. I'm so convinced that Pet Sematary is going to come out. It won't be as big as it because it's not got the creepy clown or the Stranger Things vibe, and it's not got the even though I don't like the miniseries of it, I will admit that it has more iconicity than Pet Sematary does. Pet Sematary is not very good either. The film of Pet Sematary is actually kind of bad.
I thought it was a TV series for some reason because I thought Pet Sematary was a collection of short stories.
No. That's the Skeleton Crew is. It could be that, and there is one with like graveyards or something that is a collection. Pet Sematary was a film, and then it actually had a sequel, and it is a cinema release film. It's about this family move to a house on a that's like just by a big stretch of road where people are speeding all the time because there's no like it's a straight long stretch of road with no like cops or anything, so people like just barrel down it. Like way faster than they should. And also near this house, as well as this stretch of road, is a pet cemetery that is like built on an Indian burial ground or something. And if you bury your dead pet there, it will come back to life. And this family's cat gets run over by a lorry. And presumably is like flattened into a paste, but they bury it there. The dad doesn't want to tell his kid that like the cat's dead, so he buries it and then it comes back to life. But it's like a bit.
Wait, are they aware of the fact that they live next to the haunted graveyard?
So there's two houses here. There's theirs, and across the freeway, across the stretch of is an old
death trap.
Is an old man who provides all the exposition they need. The man who knows, and he tells like he's like really nosy and he keeps butting in all the time and visiting unannounced. And when he sees that the cat's dead, he goes like, "No, don't tell your son about this. You can bury it there and it'll come back." And so they do it, and it comes back, and it's
that's just what my neighbours do all the time.
So they do it, and then he comes back. The cat comes back, but it's like really aggressive and violent now. Right. Anyway. One day the kid's playing with a football and it goes onto the road and he runs out and he's flattened, dead. And it is every bit as comical as I made it sound. It is really cartoonish. And they bury the kid and then the kid comes back. But is he the same? Oh. Is he?
Probably not.
I've not read Pet Sematary, but I've heard that the book is like. Many people say it's Stephen King's best book, that it's actually quite upsetting and sad. The film is really cheesy and stupid and like really over the top. Like when the kid dies at first, this isn't a spoiler. This is the premise of the film. The kid dies.
Yeah.
They go to the funeral, and the dad. So the father-in-law, the mum's parents hate the dad.
Right.
They hate him, and then in the middle of the funeral, the mum's dad comes over to her husband and like grabs him and goes like, "It was your fault," and starts shaking him in the middle of the funeral, and it's really over the top and silly. And he throws him onto the coffin, and then the boy like flops out in the middle of the church, and the mother's like hysterically crying. It's so, and then the dad like starts beating up his father-in-law, and it's so like over the top and silly. But it is a decent, like, I don't have a problem with the story, and I've heard that the book is quite creepy and dramatic. I'm okay with it being made. I will say the Pet Sematary film is better than the It film. Like, it has a couple of bits that are legitimately a bit unsettling, and it has one really cool just one. Like, the film is really, like, there's no violence in it, apart from this one death that is so gratuitous and so violent and shocking, and that bit's really good. And then the rest of it is like, there's no violence at all, apart from this one horrific death. But I'd like a Pet Sematary film.
I think it just sounds. I mean, again, this all my information of it has just come from you describing it just now, and it sounds quite boring to me. Because the thing, I'm so used to those kind of, oh no, my child has died, I'll resurrect them stories, and it doesn't even I just think of films like The Others or The Boy or something like that.
I would say it's much more B-movie-ish than them. Yeah, I would say that Pet Sematary isn't. It's not like those, because there are more elements to it. Like the dad is a doctor, or is he a vet? I don't remember. And he's like haunted by a friendly ghost that's a bit like American Werewolf in London.
Right.
And there's like other elements like that where it gets a bit more trippy than just the kid. Like there's the one bit that I really like from the other film is the mother used to have a sister who had some horrific condition. It's a real condition. I can't remember what it is though, but it made like her back really deformed, and she couldn't like feed herself or anything. And she's something like that, yeah. And she was like lying in bed, like couldn't eat, couldn't look after herself or anything. And one day, she was like having some kind of seizure or something, and she's supposed to get help, but the sister just let her die. She just let her die to sort of put her and the family out of the misery. And when stuff starts going wrong in Pet Sematary, the sister comes back as a ghostly vision, and it's quite frightening. So there's more than just the little kid. And as I said, when the kid goes evil, it's not like normal movie kid evil, where he's being subtly creepy. Like, he goes Michael Myers.
Okay, well, I again,
he becomes a slasher villain. But what I really enjoy about the other film is his voice when he goes evil. He is just precious. He is so funny. He sounds like Cartman when he goes evil. There's a bit where he calls his dad after he's been resurrected, and it is like, he sounds so much like Cartman when he says something like, "Man!" Okay, like it's just he's so funny, and he keeps like doing this evil laugh, like, and he's great. I loved him. But I don't know. I'm just brought it up because I knew they were going to do Pet Sematary when they did one. I've got one last news story.
Okey-dokey.
This is much more recent, and it's to do with New Mutants. Do you know anything about New Mutants?
This is the one you wanted me to react to, right?
Only a little. It's not like it's nothing as like outrageous as the one that you made me react to.
Oh, okay, right.
It's not like outrageous. It's just bizarre. I just didn't really. I was surprised when I read it. So for a start, it's wrapped filming. I didn't know that it had started filming.
Oh. Yeah, no, neither did I. This is going great so far then.
Yeah, I saw this thing and it was like, oh, production has been wrapped on 20th Century Fox's X-Men: The New Mutants. And I was like, it began?
Yeah. Is it
and
Bryan Singer still, or
no, it's Josh Boone who directed The Fault in Our Stars.
oh?
Wait until you hear his pitch for it. Because he drops all these like films as like it's like this mixed with this
Like Touchstone.
and I started and I started to think and I was like what is it, because these films just I don't know what it means when you mesh these films together. I was so like, you've just listed about 50 films and I don't see any connective thing.
Is it?
So he
is this
said,
following from your Spider-Man point where he's going to mention a John Hughes film or something?
it's well, he does mention John Hughes actually. I'm not even kidding, but he said so. He described it as a haunted house movie with a bunch of hormonal teenagers, and I was like, okay,
All right. Yeah.
and let me just check that this is this is actually not him. This is one of the producers describing it. Okay.
Right.
So just so I'm not getting it wrong, this is what the producer said. So she said that when you look at Deadpool or Logan, like they were successful because they had their own personalities and they weren't just X-Men films. So she said she wanted to do that again for this, and great effort has been put into making sure that it's differentiated. Like, okay, cool. So haunted house movie with teenagers, right? So the only solution, so she said, it's about mutants who go through adolescence and have no impulse control, so they're dangerous. So we decided to
kind of branching onto a bit of the Legion stuff that we saw with the TV show.
Listen, we decided to kind of throw together The Breakfast Club and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which did instantly make me think of Legion. So I was like, okay, The Breakfast Club with One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
And we got the teen movie thing in there.
And teen movie thing, okay. And Haunted House.
Right.
And then she says the genre is a haunted house movie with a bunch of hormonal teenagers. We haven't seen it in a superhero movie whose genre is more like The Shining than were teenagers Let's Save the World, which is grammatically confusing. But they're also dropping The Shining in there. And I'm like, hey, what? And then they said New Mutants has previously been described as a full-fledged horror, but it's also a Breakfast Club One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest hybrid from the director of The Fault in Our Stars. What is this film? And
that is confusing because the thing is that you know how you were talking about like directors getting legs up in the first section, like Josh Boone. I've seen both of his films. Surprisingly, like the first one he did was Robot and Frank, which is like just a sweet film. Like it's not the most memorable thing going. It's just a kind of sweet thing about a man that gets his robot. That's it. Yeah. Fault in Our Stars. It's got some sad moments near the end. That's like the whole point of the film is to make you cry, basically. And that again, but the whole point is that's meant to be a feel good but sob story, really. So where does the leap to sci-fi horror come from?
Sci-fi horror,
horror.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
with The Breakfast Club.
So basically, it's like a teen psychiatric ward where they.
Let me read you the cast and see if this helps. Maisie Williams.
Oh, cool.
Anna Taylor-Joy.
Less cool.
Someone from Stranger Things, Charlie Heaton. I don't know which one he is.
Is that the boyfriend?
Let's see. He is... Oh, he's Jonathan Myers.
Okay.
Henry Zaga from 13 Reasons Why.
Is that the main guy?
Let's find out. He is... He's a Brazilian. Does that help? I don't know. I haven't seen 13 Reasons Why.
No, I do know who he is. Okay, no, I didn't like him in that. From the brief moments I saw.
Apparently he's a model.
Yeah, he's got the acting ability of one.
Okay. Blue Hunt, who's from the originals. And Alice
don't
Braga
bother looking him up.
From Queen of the South. And it's released in April. What? I've not heard of this film. I didn't
No.
know it had begun production. It's out in April, and it's got all this weirdness around it. But that's that cast does sort of make it so it's definitely teeny. You know, you got your 13 Reasons Why people and a young cast, but at the same time, what? Who is this film for? I really don't know what to make of this one at all.
Well, it's definitely got the teen crowd pegged because it's got the girl from was it The Witch and Split, Anna Taylor-Joy, Game of Thrones, Maisie Williams, 13 Reasons Why. The originals, which I assume is still popular.
It's a Vampire Diaries.
I know the Vampire
spin-off,
Diaries
isn't it?
was very popular, but I don't know about the originals. But like, it's got every single like teen covered in some.
Like
in
I just
some
thought,
form.
like when I
and
said
Queen
all
of
that
the
stuff,
South, that massive fan base is definitely.
I
going
just
to-
thought when I said 13 Reasons Why and the originals, I just thought like that's something that my sister will know better than me. My sister will understand what I'm saying more than I do. Until I mention One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and then she'll be like, "What?" And that's what's confusing me. It's like, who is this for?
Well, the thing is that I think that stuff can work because it is just trying to introduce like if it's got the whole mental health aspect, that's like.
That's gonna work for the 13 Reasons
Despite-
Why crowd.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it doesn't matter even if it's.
I've got
if it's
issues
done-
too.
Yeah, which well,
But they
obviously
didn't
was a
turn up
huge
for
point
Legion,
of
did they?
contention
They wouldn't-
with 13
they
Reasons
wouldn't-
Why.
I that's how I felt watching Legion. It speaks to me.
I've got a yellow-eyed devil in me too. Yeah, I've got an. Yeah.
Sometimes I just drift off into musical sequences in my head.
I wish I
And
did.
things,
That would
and
be
I
way
just
more
like
fun.
blank out for seconds as people like appear in front of me and then disappear. I would love if it was as like if it was marketed towards that teeny crowd, but
Yeah.
it was as weird as Legion. I'd like that.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the biggest cause for concern for me is just the Josh Boone thing. Not that I would necessarily say that either of his films were bad. I actually like I said, Robot and Frank was sweet but forgettable. Fault in Our Stars was what it said on the tin. Like it did what it set out to do. It's just such a jump from something like that to horror, which not saying that horror is like all the Blumhouse stuff. Like someone can just jump into horror, but doing a really good horror is.
But I wonder how much it is like horror and how much it is just more. They have issues.
I imagine it will be just as much a horror as Logan was to Shane.
But
Like,
I think
not really, but
I don't.
like
I think Logan did
thematically,
have.
it worked, and
There was a lot of like story beats that were kind of very westerny in Logan.
yeah, but
the
they
ending.
still like it still ended up with a superhero fight at the end. Like,
Well, it's
it
gonna.
was
It's
still
always going to, isn't it? That's inevitable.
like Deadpool was still a comedy, but at the end of the day, it was still a superhero origin story, very much by the numbers. It was just that they put the numbers in a different order for the first bit.
Are you saying that you want this to be more like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest? Do you want them to be lobotomized at the end? And
If they want it to be enjoyable, yes.
I want this to literally be The Breakfast Club meets One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest meets Haunted Mansion meets.
When you say Haunted Mansion, I just
I
think
know,
of
I didn't
the
mean the
ride
ride.
as well.
Yeah, that we could throw that in too.
So they were like dressed in like their different like 80s kids gear, and then they suddenly get in like a corridor that stretches forever, and
Yeah.
there's a guy on the voiceover saying there's only one way out and it's my way.
Oh, good. This film sounds like it's going to be a disaster. Especially since I didn't even know it was being made until they wrapped it.
Yeah, that's the confusing part. But to be fair, I don't know. Well, I didn't know Legion was coming out until you said, "Are you watching it?" So, and that was that was enjoyable. Yeah.
Mm.
I don't know. I think that Fox just doesn't have that hype that all the other ones have, where you find out about them filming 7 years in advance.
That's the thing. It's like I care more. I care more about the Fox stuff, but they don't have the I'm not seeing
presence.
Like watching behind the scenes stuff on Infinity War already, or any of that bullshit. But I would be more inclined to watch something like that for a Fox thing. I think very strange. But yeah, I just that was it. I just wanted to read you that menagerie of influences because it was very. I was reading through it, going out, what is that? What? What? I was like reading it, trying to picture the film, and I was like, right, teen movie meets haunted house, great. And then they just threw in more shit, and I was I lost track completely.
It's like 16 Candles meets Saw.
Meets Rain Man with a healthy dose of Run Lola Run. Like,
It's a bit.
It's like she was sat down, realized she hadn't seen the film, didn't know anything about it, and was just looking over at her DVD shelf and went, "It's like
I was gonna
the
say
Breakfast Club meets One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with The Shining."
Well, that sounds great, executive. What's your name? Pencil Stool. Right. I'm gonna wrap up here, kind of, because we've just gone over. Like it's an hour 20 minutes, so even then the short one's not that short.
No, not anymore.
But
I'm sorry, that was me.
Yeah, but that was good, and hopefully, well, we can, if we want to talk about more films on the next one, we can talk about it. We can talk about probably Kingsman, because you'll have seen it by then.
If it helps, you can cut everything I said about Pet Sematary, because it was just me describing the film. So
to be fair, that's most of our podcasts, just us describing the plots of stuff and then laughing at each other. That like that review of our Alien Engineers. If you want to, for some reason, if you want to hear more of this, you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google, just about anywhere there's podcasts. We also have another series called Backstory Scripts, where talking about it. Ages ago we did the script for it, like the leaked one that came out a few months ago.
it was like March.
Yeah, and so if we ever talk about the film, I think the main thing we talk about is the changes, just because that's kind of interesting. But there's a lot of stuff there's a lot of small differences from the film to the script, so if you really love the film, maybe check that out. And that's on a different feed called Backstory Scripts, as well as if you want to, if you're just listening to this, we also have the YouTube channel where we put up video reviews for lots of things occasionally. Right, thank you very much for listening, and bye.
Oh crap! I need to say goodbye, Funny.
You haven't thought about a single one.
No, I didn't. Au revoir.
What about Pet Sematary Boy? Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, no, that would be good.
Cartman voice.
Bye.
That sounds exactly like all your normal buys. That's the thing. You've done the Cartman voice too many times. Right, I'm just gonna turn off. Bye.